Morning, everybody. Your CEO thinks that search is dying and that AI is replacing it. This seems to be the narrative across lots of boardrooms across the world. Very frustrating if you work in SEO. It's not helped by articles like this in the New York Magazine saying SEO is dead, say hello to GEO. If you've been in SEO for long enough, you will have had plenty of moments where there's been lots of people saying SEO is dead. The data does not bear this out, as Malcolm mentioned before. We can say some research from Rand Fishkin at SparkToro using clickstream data from Datos. Between 2024 versus 2023, the number of searches that happened on Google grew by 20%. And while ChatGPT is big, it's not Google. So if you were to look at the number of queries that happen on ChatGPT that are akin to a Google search, so it's not somebody using ChatGPT to write a LinkedIn post or to analyze a news article or anything like that, there's 37.5 million of those that happen each day versus 14 billion on Google. So the difference between those two things is huge. And then some more recent research from SEMrush found that when people start using ChatGPT, they actually start using Google more. And anecdotally, that is also true of the way that I use ChatGPT, I think. When I use AI tools, I'm investigating more things. It probably leads me to actually search Google more as well. So that seems to be the case with the general public as well. Ultimately, I think that SEO has never been more important because the work that you do in SEO not only now helps you rank really well in traditional organic results, but it also has an influence on AI tools. So tools like ChatGPT will frequently pull in data from Google or Bing when they want like a fresh information informing their answer. And then they will take all of that information, feed it into the model, and then they heavily use the things that they find from search to influence the answer. And when they perform a search, it looks remarkably like the sort of search that a user of Google would search. And then also, when you rank really well organically, that tends to inform the AI overview as well. Not always, but the AI overviews are heavily grounded in Google's regular organic search results. So you kind of get a double benefit there. But we do have two major challenges when it comes to SEO, and I think there is a big obvious challenge that everyone is kind of aware of, which is that for a lot of businesses, organic sessions have declined year on year. There is also a deeper kind of hidden and I think maybe bigger challenge, which I will talk about in a bit. But for now, let's talk about organic sessions and the impact that we're seeing there. So the cause of this really is AI overviews. So Ahrefs put out a study where they found that AI overviews tend to reduce clicks by 34.5%. And then since March of this year, the number of queries that serve an AI overview has more than doubled. There's been a 116% increase in the number of those. Now, if you are seeing a year-on-year decline in organic session, I just want you to know that you are in very good company, right? This is data from SimilarWeb, which takes clickstream data effectively, and they are reporting that Apple, the BBC, Booking.com, Airbnb, Nike, Goodreads, The Guardian are all seeing kind of noticeable year-on-year declines in organic search sessions. And these are companies that have some of the best SEO teams in the world, right? I just want to call out the BBC here. So the BBC is down, according to SimilarWeb, 5% year on year in sessions. And this is their organic visibility over the last couple of years in Systrix. Like they are currently ranking better than they ever have. And for them to be seeing 5% fewer visits year on year is wild. And the reason for that is because of a change in user behavior. So in a lot of instances, particularly on desktop, people used to research by opening multiple tabs. So for a kind of a top of funnel kind of initial research query like best short haul destinations from Gatwick, very, very common for people to just kind of like open multiple tabs like bang, 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 and then skim read what they see there. And now lots of people are just quite content to get everything they need on one page. So the AI overview for a lot of people for these initial research queries kind of has a lot of what they need. And then a lot of the user behavior that we're seeing is that people will get everything they need from this, maybe perform another search and then another search, and they don't actually really need to click through. They're kind of getting everything they need directly on Google's search results. I do want to call out the fact that all of this content that is informing this is still valuable. So EasyJet, for example, their content is encouraging Barcelona as a destination here. Barcelona is a destination that EasyJet serves quite prominently from Gatwick. So they get benefit there, but then they also, really importantly, like I think the bigger benefit is that they get to show their brand to people who are like when they're right in the middle of it, or right at the start of this kind of like initial research, they're showing their brand, they're showing their logo. And we know that that's really important because there's lots of kind of empirical marketing studies out there that show when you are like considered early, you're much more likely to be and end up being bought. McKinsey is one such example. They put out some research that showed that brands that were in that initial consideration set were twice as likely to be bought versus brands that were kind of discovered towards the end of the purchase journey. So it's absolutely valuable to be there early. So I mentioned the big obvious challenge is that organic sessions have declined. And I mentioned that there was a deeper, like more hidden but perhaps bigger challenge. And I think that is a challenge of attribution. So if we would take kind of a very top level view as to how some research might go or how like a booking might go, you will get people doing some initial research where they will search for things like best short haul destinations from Gatwick. They might move on to some more serious research where they're searching for things like cheap flights to Barcelona, and then they might end up on a purchase of just searching for EasyJet, for example, or EasyJet Barcelona or EasyJet flights. Really, the journey is way more messy than this, but at a very top level view, like this seems fairly indicative. And the thing that's really interesting about this is that the purchase and the serious research mostly, like the purchase definitely happens on site. The serious research, most of that probably happens on site. The initial research, I think more and more of this is happening off-site. There was always loads of initial research that would happen off-site, but I think that percentage of people who are happy doing like the vast majority of this initial research off-site is growing, particularly from, well, partly from ChatGPT, but particularly with AI overviews. And I think that's the real thing. And the issue there is if somebody does all of their initial research through the AI overviews, and then a week later they come back via direct or via a brand search, or maybe they just go in store, depending on what your product is. There's no way of attributing the fact that the work that you did to appear in the AI overview informed that sale. And I think that's an issue because, as Rory Sutherland, the famous ad man, says, we overinvest in the things that we can measure. And the counter of that is true as well. We underinvest in things that are hard to measure, which I think is a real shame because sometimes the things that are hard to measure are the most impactful. He was talking about this really in the context of the last 25 years of digital marketing, where people have biased towards overinvesting in performance marketing at the expense of brand building, because performance marketing, shorter time window, much easier to measure. Brand building, we know it's very impactful, but it's harder to measure. So that was the case that he was making, or the point that he was making. So that's the situation. What does this mean for your SEO strategy? So I think everyone is in a different situation. You will have kind of different things that you will want from your SEO strategy, but I would consider for most businesses, I would suggest thinking about three particular things. One, I think you should measure the upper funnel. So you can't attribute it when more and more people are using purely AI overviews and not clicking through. But I think you can do things to measure it. And it's worth doing that and then reporting that to the senior leadership and getting them to take it seriously. I think you should experiment with appearing in AI tools, but really crucially, do not overdo it. And I will talk about what I mean by that in a bit. And then I would also encourage a focus on brand building. As Malcolm said earlier, it's really, really important. And I think in the last couple of years, it's become even more important for SEO in particular. And I will explain about that in a bit. But for now, let's talk about measuring the upper funnel. So I think there's three things to look at here. In terms of visibility, I think we should be reporting on non-brand impressions. So this, by the way, is not replacing any of the traditional SEO metrics that you would look at. This is just in addition to. I think it is really useful to look at non-brand impressions. If you think about this world where loads of people are using purely AI overviews and doing all of their research there, you want to know if you are showing up, right? And if you are seeing a year-on-year gain or decline in this. So start measuring this, start reporting this to the senior leadership team. I think you should look at user behavior changes. So are you seeing an increase in direct and homepage traffic? And homepage traffic could be organic, it could be brand. It could be paid. But if you're thinking of this world where everyone's searching and like doing all their research in AI overviews, and then a week later comes back, could be direct, could be through a brand paid ad. You want to see if this number is seeing an increase year on year or not, because it's quite indicative. And then brand demand as well. So I think you should be looking at brand impressions. It's a very different thing to non-brand impressions, but again, in this world where loads of research happens on AI overviews, are more people searching for your brand? And this is importantly, you are not taking all of the credit for this. That would be wild. What you're doing here is just kind of trying to measure whether there is an uplift because you are potentially contributing to it. But importantly, I think brand impressions is the sort of thing where, as a metric for the entire marketing team to get behind, if you can make that number go up, then you're clearly doing the right things. Ultimately, improving upper funnel visibility is much harder if you don't measure it, and so I think it needs to be considered. So the second thing, I think you should experiment with appearing in AI tools. There are cheap tricks that work for now, and I would really strongly encourage you to not take advantage of them. But you can learn from them. So I'm going to show you one example. I'm really sorry to call them out. I don't know who they are, but I'm just going to call them out because a lot of people are doing this. So I wanted to show you kind of like what is working. On a search for who are the best SEO agencies on ChatGPT, in this query, it showed First Page Sage were the number one SEO agency. I've never actually heard of them. I think they're US only. If you look in the sources, you can see why ChatGPT recommended them, and it's because they have written a blog post on the top SEO agencies, and at number one, First Page Sage think it's First Page Sage. It is absolutely absurd that this works, but there is something that you can learn from it, and the lesson here is large language models are like very naive. They're very gullible. They just kind of take that process where they are taking in search results and using it to inform the model. They just take anything they see kind of at face value. But you can use that for good. You do not have to use this in a shady way. And in fact, I would really encourage you to be very cautious of using shady tactics for AI. The reason I mention this is because you might have like a lot of pressure on you to improve your AI visibility. And you should be cautious of this. As Glenn Gabe says, it works until it doesn't. If you get a penalty in Google because you're doing something shady to improve your AI visibility, not only do you drop out of Google, which is probably your largest traffic driving source, but you will also probably drop out of AI results as well because they heavily rely on Google and Bing for data. So be very cautious of that. But as I said, you can learn from what's working and use that in a way that is actually genuinely good. So as an example, Nationwide won the banking brand of the year from Which recently, which is obviously very good, very compelling. It's a very prestigious kind of award. Their current accounts, mortgage accounts, like kind of like all of their landing pages, kind of like core services that they sell, do not mention that. And I think that they should, because adding that sort of trust signal to the page is very compelling to users. It would probably improve your conversion rate. But also it gives the LLM that information about why you are a good choice and would probably improve their ability to be recommended by the LLM when it brings that content in. This isn't really GEO, right? This is just good marketing. But I think if you have a lot of focus on you to improve AI visibility, I think it might be sensible to use that focus to make sure that all of your landing pages are as compelling as possible and just really well built, and that you're including those sort of trust signals that are useful for users and useful for AI tools as well. So ultimately, my advice here is experiment with AI, but judge the success on it on whether it is better for the user. Like, is it creating a better customer experience? And then the last thing to focus on, I think, is to encourage a focus on brand building, because I think it's become more of a signal that Google has used in the last couple of years. There are lots and lots of benefits to having a strong, trusted brand. And my favorite one is simply the ability to charge more for your product. You can see this in the difference between the cost of like generic ibuprofen and Nurofen. It's the exact same product, but the price difference is substantial. But also it gives you better mental availability, which just means, do you come to mind when people enter the category? You are more appealing to journalists, so it's easier for you to get press coverage or links or brand mentions. You have better customer loyalty. People are more likely to buy from you again. And you have better talent attraction, so it's easier for you to hire. But I think when people are deciding on how much to split the budget between things like performance marketing or brand building, they don't necessarily consider the impact that it has on SEO. And I firmly believe that strong brands do better in SEO. And because they do better in SEO, they also do better in AI results too. So for a long time, a lot of SEOs have suspected that Google heavily use user engagement data as quite a core part of their algorithm. And a couple of years ago, that was kind of confirmed with some documentation that Google had to release. I just want to call out the fact that like this says user interactions. What users say about the document is effectively saying, like, on search results, they're looking at things like click-through rate, which queries get clicked on, and it's so integral that it's considered one of the three pillars of ranking for Google. So we work with a travel client who is very well respected. A decent brand name. They've been around for a very long time. They have a high street presence, but for their target audience, their big competitor is Virgin, and Virgin have much deeper pockets when it comes to a marketing budget. They literally own an airline. Like, they're huge. They are the bigger brand, and we thought that when we go up against Virgin in search results, it probably negatively impacts our click-through rate. So to prove it, we took thousands of non-brand keywords that are very meaningful to our client, and we grouped them into two groups. So group A is we appear in the top three and Virgin don't. Group B, we appear in the top three and so do Virgin. And we found that when we directly compete with them in search results, our click-through rate drops by 29%. And it's purely the strength of Virgin's brand that does that, right? So Virgin's really getting two significant benefits here. They obviously get more traffic from having a stronger brand because they have a better click-through rate. And that 29% is significant because it's almost the same as AI overviews again, but for commercial queries. So it's very compelling for them to have that strong kind of brand. But then they also have all of those indirect signals. Because they have a better click-through rate, I think they have a much better time of ranking well for those queries that they're going for. So they get a very, very significant benefit from that. Ultimately, I think you should be making the case for brand investment. This is kind of a weird one for SEOs because I think SEO as a channel is very good at harvesting demand, but not really creating demand. But because you benefit from it so much, you should be making the case within the business for that brand investment. So in summary, I think the three things to consider for your SEO strategy is measuring the top of funnel. So reporting on impressions, direct and homepage traffic, and making it really important to the senior team. I think you should experiment with AI, appearing in AI, but avoid the cheap tricks. Learn from them and make sure that what you're doing is improving the UX and the customer experience. And then make the case for brands. So we know that brand building improves SEO, it improves conversion rates, and much, much more. So try and make the case for it. Ultimately, I think you should focus on customers, not on clicks. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Very well done. If anyone has any questions for Dave, please obviously pop your hand up, and we'll answer any questions. Alternatively, please send them to me on search. There's a couple that have come through whilst you've been talking there, Dave. I think you mentioned a couple of times throughout your talk around kind of reporting into the senior team, reporting to stakeholders. For people specifically in SEO teams where they have CFOs that care mainly about, the pounds and the pence and the return on measuring everything, how would they best approach getting their CFO to care more around those kind of brand metrics?
Yeah, sure. You have to make the case for it, right? You have to make the case. So you've got to prove to somebody like a CFO, you have to kind of like get them bought in to the fact that having a strong brand is a multiplier effect for all of your performance marketing. So try and build like a bit of a model for like what you think it would have as an impact on things like your click-through rate, your conversion rate, what the impact it might have on having more traffic come in through direct or brand versus non-brand, right? Like brand traffic is much cheaper than non-brand traffic. So if you can get them bought into a bit of a model as to what you think having a stronger brand will have commercially, you will have a much better time. And this isn't to try and predict the future, it's just to get them bought in on the fact that these are the metrics that you're trying to improve. Because this is the sort of metrics that would resonate with them.
Perfect. Thank you for that, Dave. And just another quick one here is there anything that you would recommend doing differently for GEO outside of standard SEO practice?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really difficult one because I kind of think that with GEO, 90 to 95% of it is SEO. There is kind of a little bit of additional stuff that you could look at, which is, as Malcolm said, uh, does is your content accessible when JavaScript is disabled? That's kind of, quite a big one. Everything else is kind of like, are you making a really compelling case? As I mentioned before, with like trust signals, are you making a compelling case on your landing page as to why you are a really good choice? And including kind of that in the landing page in a way that's good for users and good for AI tools. There is something else that we're advising some of our clients for where it's really, well, where it's relevant, which is for particular products saying who this is actually ideal for and just making it really clear. So for one of our travel clients on there, they have lots of different hotels that they sell. And we're including, or we're trying to include things where it's like, this hotel is particularly suited for families with small children, or maybe this one is really good for honeymooners, or this one's really good if you like scuba diving, just because we think that over time people are going to search with like much longer tail queries, and this just gives the model like way more information about who this is really, really useful for. So things like that are kind of some of the things that we're considering.
Perfect. That's fantastic. Thank you for that, Dave.